right. Now I'd like to introduce you to the candidates running for Kennewick City Council position 2. We have Greg Jones and Steve Lee here. Once again, each of you have 1 minute and a half for opening statements, and we will do this in alphabetical order. Mr. Jones, you're up first.
Jay comes before Lee. Cool. Good evening, everybody. I appreciate you guys coming. I really want to thank the sponsors. It's a wonderful venue. Thank you to Kennewick School District, KNDU, Consejo Latino, and especially the League of Women Voters. These are great forums. It's excellent to get out here and be able to talk to you guys, tell us what we're all about. I'm a 24-year resident of the city of Kennewick. I moved here from Seattle because it's a better place to live. Okay? It just is, I'm telling you. The reason I'm on the city council, I've been on for 4 years, almost 5. I was on the planning commission for 2 years before that. The reason I'm involved in my city is because I can make a difference. I believe I have the experience, skills, education. My real job, I manage $2.5 billion a year in annual budget, about $10 billion in contracting, labor agreements, etc. That work that I do in my real life is transferable to helping the city be a successful place. What am I all about? Quality of life. I moved here for a reason. I'm here for public safety. It's vital to each and every one of us that we feel safe in our community. I'm about economic development. Hanford won't last forever. We have to look to the future. That's the reason I got on the council in the first place. We need more industrial land in the Tri-Cities. We need the urban growth area south of I-82 because we don't have enough industrial land. We need high tech. And I'm about sound financial management and government transparency. My education and experience, I think, makes me uniquely qualified. This is a hiring decision. I believe I'm the right person. I'm not done yet. Please reelect me. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. Mr. Lee, your opening statement, please.
Hi, everybody. I hope this is working right. My name is Steve Lee. I am a Kennewick native. I am a small business owner here in the area. Previously, I worked with the Pasco Chamber of Commerce for more than 2 years, helping develop small business relationships in industrial and in the ag community. After that, I was a graduate of Leadership Tri-Cities Class 15. We were the Challenge the Process class. Through that opportunity, I was able to work with the Richland Public Facilities District for 2 years, raising funding and helping the Hanford Reach Interpretive Center become a reality for our community. Now, in more recent days, I'm an amateur philanthropist. I'm a fierce advocate for the arts. Most recently, I was awarded Outstanding Business Owner of the Year by the West Richland Chamber of Commerce, as well as Young Professional of the Year by the Tri-City Area Journal of Business. I have currently about 45 employees, which sounds crazy. We've spent about $400,000 in the last 2 years on remodel projects using local contractors and local labor. We paid about $4.5 million in state taxes in the last year alone, and we paid over $1 million in local sales tax in the last year, as well as B&O and things like that. We basically already live in Pleasantville. I'm from this town. I want to retire here. There's not much better it can be, but there are some things that we can improve upon. My goal is to help this town grow in a way that helps us to sustain our values while being competitive in the state and region for young professionals who come and create small business jobs in our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lee. Now we'll move on to the questions for these candidates. Mr. Jones, you will begin. Since Benton County banned any future recreational marijuana stores, would you support a continued moratorium in Kennewick? And this is an audience question.
I would support a continued moratorium in Kennewick, and here's why. First of all, I believe it's the right thing to do. The city of Kennewick residents were voted against marijuana in our city. My wife is an educator. She's been in education for almost 30 years, and I've seen what it's done to people. I don't believe it's positive for our city. I don't particularly want it in my city. It might be one of the reasons why my opponent decided to run against me, but I'm not for it, and I don't think it's healthy for our city. So I would strongly support a continued moratorium on marijuana in the city of Kennewick. Thanks.
Thank you. Mr. Lee?
This is a question we seem to get on repeat, so I'm excited to answer it in this very public forum. My position on cannabis in our community is that it has to be a voter-decided issue. And so, Greg is correct. The city of Kennewick decided to not have cannabis in their community. the county of Benton didn't make such a decision. So there are changes in values as you change into different jurisdictions. I think if you talk to the county commissioners, they'll tell you that they haven't had a lot of problems with the industry, and especially with the tax dollars that it brings. But, to each their own. I wouldn't support, as a Kennewick City Council person, forcing my profession or my values on the voting base of our community without broad-based support. That's not what a city council is for, and it would make the last 3 years of my term as city council person pretty unpleasant if I became the citywide villain. So I'm here to do the best I can to make my community as livable and wonderful as possible. I have sincere passion and enthusiasm for improving our community and representing a often unheard voice. Thank you.
Mr. Lee, what is your position on the link? Should people vote for it, and why?
My position on the link
not.
is
Why or why not? That's important.
Thank you for the distinction. My position on the link is a pretty simple one. And hearkening back to my opening statement, my priority in leadership in this community is to help us grow in a way that helps us retain our young talent, our young professionals, to keep them from moving to places like Seattle and Portland and Vancouver and Spokane, as well as to attract other high energy, maybe non-risk averse small business owners to come and create living wage jobs in the community that they live in. The link is one of the solutions that makes our community more livable. If we create solutions to keep people engaged in this community and excited about what's going on, they will stay, their children will stay, and more people will continue to move here. As City Council, we should be supporting any project that continues to develop our community with the legacy of a premier spot to live in the entire state of Washington and the Northwest at large.
Mr. Jones?
Thank you very much. I'm 100% in favor of the link, and I'll tell you why. It supports two of the pillars that I'm talking about, quality of life and economic development. The link will do four things for us, okay? It's going to help attract and retain convention space. It's vital to the city to continue to have conventions, okay? They bring in revenue, they bring in people, they go to our shops, they support our restaurants. It helps with growth. It also can help drive industry to come here. Second, it provides performing arts theater. I love performing arts. My daughter was in ballet. I think it's very important. Unfortunately, the Windermere Theater, as much as we've tried, is just not the greatest venue. A 2,300-seat theater that is adaptable to be used for both convention space and a theater is going to be helpful. What will that also do? Help drive culture. Culture drives industry. It drives high tech. So it also helps with economic development. The third thing, the Toyota Center. It is tired. It needs an update. It's not ADA compliant. That's some of the things we're going to do. Seating, spaces, sight lines, some of the hardcore infrastructure. And then the fourth thing that we've added that I think is vital, it's about our youth. We are going to add a hockey rink. We're partnering with Takaha, which is the youth hockey group, to provide more ice rink space, which also helps the maintenance and operations of the convention space, as the Americans don't have to necessarily practice on that ice, and then you load it out for an event in the evening. You'll have space for them to practice, and you also will for youth hockey. Thank you.
Mr. Jones, you're up first again. Do you believe the city should pass Let me restart. Do you believe the city should pass resolutions, thus taking a formal stand on social issues? For example, the Arlene's Flowers case out of Richland. Please explain your position.
Yeah, I think this is a tough issue. In general, I don't think we should, and I'm going to tell you why. One of the biggest risks that the city has is lawsuits against us. And you can't control who files a lawsuit against you. And what happens is, if somebody files a lawsuit against us, what do? We have to go into an executive session, talk to lawyers, hire outside counsel, use city resources to fight that lawsuit, all right? So the more we start getting into things that are not really the policy and business of the city, the more likely we are to be involved in what might be called frivolous lawsuits. So this is a risk management thing in my perspective. The more we stay within our swim lane, deal with policies that we are responsible for, that are not the federal government's policy or the state's policy, but our city's policies, the more likely we are to manage our risk and not waste our resources on an executive session that leads to fighting a lawsuit. Thank you.
Mr. Lee?
This is an excellent question. It's one of the things that last year kind of inspired me to make the decision to run for Kennewick City office. I've been on the record as saying this before, I think that any decision that the city can make that helps us be more desirable and marketable to an economically diverse spectrum of small business owners and citizenry is an incredible thing for us. And I think that it's silly to shy away from that if we get an opportunity. Now, I also I hear Greg's point, and I don't disagree. I think that city council shouldn't be inviting frivolous lawsuits wherever it can help it. And we shouldn't be taking unnecessary social stands. Now, 2 points to that. If the citizenry brings us a social stand that they ask us to make, they are asking us to represent their interests. If it doesn't violate the law, if it doesn't stop revenue from coming in, if it doesn't stop the clock from turning, we ought to consider that a pretty easy decision if we get a large majority of the people saying something like, we want you to make a diversity statement, So that's great stuff. Secondarily, city council should be the realm of, boring, earnest civic servant stuff. It shouldn't be It shouldn't be the kind of place where the city council people are inviting the community to make broad stands of civic support for national issues. We should be talking about budgets and streets and schools, not Facebook posts and things that are unnecessarily inflammatory. City government is for the adults. So I'm excited to be one of the grown-ups that helps shape this community and make it acceptable and wonderful for years to come.
Thank you, Mr. Lee. You will be up first for the final question. Would you support having the state modify the Growth Management Act? Why or why not?
Oh, so many complicated questions. One of the things that I've learned over and over again in the process of running for office is so few answers are yes or no, black or white. Everything's kind of a shade of gray. Growth management issues are very complicated. You have federal and regional interests that are setting the tone for the development of local jurisdictions. There are a lot of complicated factors at play. I sat down with a few of the associations over the past few weeks to learn about their issues, and they are complicated. So, the urban growth stuff isn't a direct city council change to make. We do have, control on zoning and things like that. I think that we need to grow as responsibly as possible. I'm not all for unlimited suburban sprawl, even if we had the free route to do it and unlimited cheap property development. We need to consider medium density and building up, if nothing else, just to compete aesthetically with the communities and regions around us. This community has a future that doesn't look like this community today exactly. Our job over the next 15 years is to help guide that in a way that keeps all the good stuff and helps us attract the kinds of people we want to develop those businesses and properties in this community.
Thank you. Mr. Jones?
Repeat the question.
Yes. Would you support having the state modify the Growth Management Act? Why or why not?
To some extent. Our avenue to do that is really through Association of Washington Cities. That's how we enact legislation. We're a member of it as the city of Kennewick. The Growth Management Act is really designed for cities like Seattle, Federal Way, Tacoma. That's what it was designed for, really. The application to some cities like Kennewick, Richland, West Richland is not as true, okay? So one of the things that's hurt us, we've been trying diligently to expand our urban growth area south of I-82 into some farmland that is not being utilized because it's not very fertile, it's not irrigable, etc. And we're being stopped from doing that by the current Growth Management Act. So why does that matter to the city of Kennewick? We have about a little less than 10% industrial land in the city of Kennewick, and most of it is old. It's along the railroad corridors, and what's happened is residential is now abutting against it. So that's a problem. Nobody wants industrial or high commercial right next to them. So why is this important? It is inhibiting us from growing. We can't attract high tech, chip makers, we can't attract warehousing, etc., because we just don't have the land mass to do it. So I think smartly working to modify the Growth Management Act is good. There are some good things about it. Some open spaces are vital. You have to have, that's one of the things that's nice about the Tri-Cities is, if you come down out of the Cascade Mountains into Cle Elum, your stress goes out because you're in Eastern Washington, right? We don't want to change that, but we do want to be able to grow. Thank you.
Thank you. If everyone could help me thank both of these candidates running for Kennewick City Council, position 2.